I'm back with the story of last night. I'm continuing where we left off. This is the story titled Escape from Java. And we had come to the place where I think I'll start a little bit ahead so that it will stitch on to the previous reading. So these two boys are in their bicycles racing home, and the bombs are falling. It's the situation is the war, Second World War. So, should we get off our cycles and take shelter somewhere? I called out. No, let's race home, shouted Sono. The bombs won't fall here. But he was wrong. The planes flew in very low. Looking up for a moment, I saw the sun blotted out by the sinister shape of a Jap fighter bomber. We pedaled furiously, but we had barely covered 50 yards when there was a terrific explosion on our right. Behind some houses, the shock sent us spinning across the road. We were flung from our cycles, and the cycles, still propelled by the blast, crashed into a wall. I felt a stinging sensation in my hands and legs, as though scores of little insects had bitten me. Tiny droplets of blood appeared here and there on my flesh. Sona was on all fours, crawling beside me, and I saw that he too had the same small scratches on his hands and forehead made by tiny shards of flying glass. We were quickly on our feet, and then we began running in the general direction of our homes. The twisted cycles lay forgotten on the road. Get off the streets, you two, shouted someone from a window. But we weren't going to stop running until we got home. And we ran faster than we had ever run in our lives. My father and Sono's parents were themselves running about the street, calling for us when we came rushing around the corner and tumbled into their arms. Where have you been? What has happened to you? How did you get those cuts? All superfluous questions, but before we could recover our breath and start explaining, we were bundled into our respective homes. My father washed my cuts and scratches, dabbed at my face and legs with iodine, ignoring my yelps, and then stuck plaster all over my face. Soon, Sono and I had a fright, and we did not venture far from home again. That night, my father said, I think we'll be able to leave in a day or two. Has another ship come in? I asked. No, he said. Then how are we going? By plane? Wait and see. It isn't settled yet, but we won't be able to take much with us. Just enough to fill a couple of traveling bags. What about the stamp collection? I asked. My father's stamp collection was quite valuable and filled several volumes. I'm afraid we'll have to leave most of it behind, he said. Perhaps Mr. Hartono will keep it for me. And when the war is over, if it's over, we'll come back for it. But we can take one or two albums with us, can't we? I asked. I'll take one, he said. There'll be room for one. Then if we are short of money in Bombay, we can sell some stamps. Bombay? That's in India. I thought we were going back to England. First, we must go to India, he said. The following morning, I found Sono in the garden, patched up like me and with one foot in a bandage. But he was as cheerful as ever and gave me his usual wide grin. We are leaving tomorrow, I said. The grin left his face. I'll be sad when you go, he said, but I'll be glad too, because then you will be able to escape from the Japs. After the war, I'll come back, I said. Yes, you must come back. And then, when we are big, we will go around the world together. I want to see England and America and Africa and India and Japan. I want to go everywhere, he said. We can't go everywhere, I said. Yes, we can. No one can stop us, Sono said. We had to be up very early the next morning. Our bags had been packed late at night. We were taking a few clothes, some of my father's business papers, a pair of binoculars, one stamp album, and several bars of chocolate. I was pleased about the stamp album and the chocolates, but I had to give up several of my treasures, favorite books, the gramophone and records, an old samurai sword, a train set, and a dartboard. The only consolation was that Sono, and not a stranger, would have them. In the first faint light of dawn, a truck drew up in front of the house. It was driven by a Dutch businessman, Mr. Hoekens, who worked with my father. Sono was already at the gate, waiting to say goodbye. I have a present for you, he said. He took me by the hand and pressed a smooth, hard object into my palm. I grasped it and then held it up against the light. It was a beautiful little seahorse carved out of pale blue jade. It will bring you luck, he said. Thank you, I said. I'll keep it forever. And I slipped the little seahorse into my pocket. In you get, lad, said my father, and I got up on the front seat between him and Mr. Hookens. As the truck started up, I turned to wave to Sono. He was sitting on his garden wall, grinning at me. He called out, We'll go everywhere and no one can stop us, he said. He was still waving when the truck took us around the bend at the end of the road. We drove through the still, quiet streets of Batavia, that is Jakarta, occasionally passing burnt-out trucks and shattered buildings. Then we left the sleeping city far behind and were climbing into the forested hills. It had rained during the night, and when the sun came up over the green hills, it twinkled and glittered on the broad, wet leaves. The light in the forest changed from dark green to greenish gold, broken here and there by the flaming red or orange of a trumpet-shaped blossom. It was impossible to know the names of all those fantastic plants. The road had been cut through dense tropical forest, and on either side the trees jostled each other, hungry for the sun. But they were chained together by the liana creepers and vines that fed upon the struggling trees. Occasionally a jelarang, a large Javan squirrel, frightened by the passing of the truck, leapt through the trees before disappearing into the depths of the forest. We saw many birds, peacocks, jungle fowl, and one standing majestically at the side of the road, a crowned pigeon, its great size and splendid crest making it a striking object even at a distance. Mr. Hookens slowed down so that we could look at the bird. It bowed its head so that its crest swept the ground. Then it emitted a low, hollow boom rather than the call of a turkey. When we came to a small clearing, we stopped for breakfast. Butterflies, black, green, and gold, flitted across the clearing. The silence of the forest was broken only by the drone of airplanes. Japanese Zeros heading for Batavia, that's Jakarta, on another raid. I thought about Sono and wondered about what he would be doing at home, probably trying out the gramophone. We ate boiled eggs and drank tea from a thermos, then got back onto the truck and resumed our journey. I must have dozed off soon after because the next thing I remember is that we were going quite fast down a steep, winding road, and in the distance I could see a calm blue lagoon. We have reached sea again, I said. That's right, said my father. But now we are nearly 100 miles from Batavia, that's Jakarta, in another part of the island. You are looking out over the Sunda Straits. Then he pointed towards a shimmering white object resting on the waters of the lagoon. That's our plane, he said. A seaplane, I exclaimed. I never guessed. Where will it take us? To Bombay, I hope. There aren't many other places left to go to, said my father. It was a very pleasant, a very old seaplane, and no one, not even the captain, the pilot who was called the captain, could promise that it would take off. Mr. Hawkins wasn't coming with us. He said the plane would be back for him the next day. Besides my father and me, there were 4 other passengers, and all but one was Dutch. The odd man out was a Londoner, a motor mechanic who had been left behind in Java when his unit was evacuated. He told us later that he had fallen asleep at a bar in the Chinese Quarter, waking up some hours after his regiment had moved off. He looked rather scruffy. He had lost the top button of his shirt, but instead of leaving his collar open, as we did, he had kept it together with a large safety pin, which thrust itself out from behind a bright pink tie. It's a relief to find you here, Governor, he said, shaking my father by the hand. Knew you for a Yorkshireman the minute I set eyes on you. It's the sang-froid that does it, if you know what I mean. He meant sang-froid, French for a cool look. And here I was, with all these flipping foreigners, and me not knowing a word of what they have been yattering about. Do you think this old tub will get us back to Blighty? It does look a bit shaky, said my father. One of the first flying boats, from the looks of it. If it gets us to Bombay, that's far enough. Anywhere out of Java is good enough for me, said our new companion. The name is Mugarich. Pleased to know you, Mr. Mugarich, said my father. I'm Bond, and this is my son. Mr. Mugarich rumpled my hair and favored me with a large wink. The captain of the seaplane was beckoning to us to join him in a small skiff, which was about to take us across a short stretch of water to the seaplane. Here we go, said Mr. Mugarich. Say your prayers and keep your fingers crossed. The seaplane was a long time getting airborne. It had to make several runs before it finally took off. Then, lurching drunkenly, it rose into the air, into the clear blue sky. For a moment, I thought we were going to end up in the briny, said Mr. Muggeridge, untying his seat belt. And talking of fish, I would give a week's wages for a plate of fish and chips and a pint of beer. I'll buy you a beer in Bombay, said my father. Have an egg, I said, remembering we still had some boiled eggs in one of the travelling bags. Thanks, mate, said Mr. Muggeridge, accepting an egg with alacrity. A real egg, too. I've been living on egg powder these last 6 months. That's what they give you in the army. And it's in hen's eggs they make it from. Let me tell you, it's either gull's eggs or turtle's eggs. No, said my father with a straight face. Snake's eggs. Mr. Muggeridge turned a delicate shade of green, but he soon recovered his poise. And for about an hour, he kept talking about almost everything under the sun, including Churchill, Hitler, Roosevelt, Mahatma Gandhi, and Betty Grable. The last named was famous for her beautiful legs. He would have gone on talking all the way to Bombay had he been given a chance. But suddenly a shudder passed through the old plane and it began lurching again. I think an engine is giving trouble, said my father. When I looked through the small glassed-in window, it seemed as though the sea was rushing up to meet us. The co-pilot entered the passenger cabin and said something in Dutch. The passengers looked dismayed and immediately began fastening their seat belts. Well, what did the blighter say? Asked Mr. Muggeridge. I think he's going to have to ditch the plane, said my father, who knew enough Dutch to get the gist of anything that was said. Down in the drink, exclaimed Mr. Muggeridge. God help us. And how far are we from Bombay? A few 100 miles, said my father. Can you swim, mate? Asked Mr. Muggeridge, looking at me. Yes, I could, I said, but not all the way to Bombay. How far can you swim? The length of a bathtub, he said. Don't worry, said my father. Just make sure your life jacket's properly tied. We looked to our life jackets. My father checked mine twice, making sure that it was properly fastened. The pilot had now cut both the engines and was bringing the plane down in a circling movement, but he couldn't control the speed and it was tilting heavily to one side. Instead of landing smoothly on its belly, it came down on a wingtip, and this caused the plane to swivel violently around in the choppy sea. There was a terrific jolt when the plane hit the water, and if it hadn't been for the seat belt, we would have been flung from our seats. Even so, Mr. Muggeridge struck his head against the seat in front, and he was now holding a bleeding nose and using some shocking language. As soon as the plane came to a standstill, my father undid my seat belt. There was no time to lose. Water was already filling the cabin, and all the passengers except one, who was dead in his seat with a broken neck, were scrambling for the exit hatch. The co-pilot pulled a lever and the door fell away to reveal high waves slapping against the sides of the stricken plane. Holding me by the hand, my father was leading me towards the exit. Quick, lad, he said, we won't stay afloat for long. Give us a hand, shouted Mr. Muggeridge, still struggling with his life jacket. First his bloody, bleeding nose, and now something's gone and stuck. My father helped him fix the life jacket, then pushed him out of the door ahead of us. As we swam away from the seaplane, Mr. Muggeridge splashing fiercely alongside us, We were ever aware of the other passengers in the water. One of them shouted to us in Dutch to follow him. We swam after him towards the dinghy, which had been released the moment we hit the water. That yellow dinghy, bobbing about on the waves, was as welcome as land. All who had left the plane managed to climb into the dinghy. We were 7 altogether, a tight fit. We had hardly settled down in the well of the dinghy when Mr. Muggeridge, still holding his nose, exclaimed, "There she goes!" And as we looked on helplessly, the seaplane sank swiftly and silently beneath the waves. The dinghy had shipped a lot of water, and soon everyone was busy bailing it out. Okay, that means so much water had come into it, and they were bailing out with mugs. There were a couple in the dinghy, mugs, hats, and bare hands. There was a light swell, and every now and then the water would roll in again and half fill the dinghy. But within half an hour, we had most of the water out, and then it was possible to take turns. 2 men doing the bailing while the others rested. No one expected me to do this work, but I gave a hand anyway, using my father's solar topi for the purpose. "Where are we?" asked one of the passengers. "A long way from anywhere," said another. "There must be a few islands in the Indian Ocean," another said. "But we may be at sea for days before we come to one of them." "Days or even weeks," said the captain. "Let us look at our supplies." The dinghy appeared to be fairly well provided with emergency rations. Biscuits, raisins, chocolates. We had lost our own chocolates, and enough water to last a week. There was also a first aid box, which was put to immediate use as Mr. Muggeridge's nose needed attention. A few others had cuts and bruises. One of the passengers had received a hard knock on the head and appeared to be suffering from a loss of memory. Pavam, he had no idea how we happened to be drifting about in the middle of the Indian Ocean. He was convinced that we were on a pleasant pleasure cruise a few miles off Batavia. Poor thing. The unfamiliar motion of the dinghy, as it rose and fell in the troughs between the waves, resulted in almost everyone getting seasick. As no one could eat anything, a day's rations were saved. The sun was very hot, but my father covered my head with a large spotted handkerchief. He had always had a fancy for bandana handkerchiefs with yellow spots, and seldom carried fewer than 2 on his person. So he had one for himself too. The solar topi, well soaked in seawater, was being used by Mr. Muggeridge. It was only when I had recovered to some extent from my seasickness that I remembered the valuable stamp collection and sat up exclaiming, "The stamps! Did you bring the stamp album, Dad?" He shook his head ruefully. "It must be at the bottom of the sea by now," he said. "But don't worry, I kept a few rare stamps in my wallet." And looking pleased with himself, he tapped the pocket of his bush shirt. The dinghy drifted all day with no one having the least idea where it might be taking us. "Probably going round in circles," said Mr. Muggeridge pessimistically. "There was no compass and no sail, and paddling wouldn't have got us far even if we had had paddles. We could only resign ourselves to the whims of the current and hope it would take us toward land, or at least to within hailing distance of some passing ship. The sun went down like an overripe tomato, dissolving slowly in the sea. The darkness pressed down on us. It was a moonless night, and all we could see was the white foam from the crests of the waves. I lay with my head on my father's shoulder and looked up at the stars which glittered in the remote heavens. Perhaps your friend Sono will look up at the sky tonight and see those same stars, said my father. The world is so big after all. All the same, there's a lot of sea around us, said Mr. Muggeridge from out of the darkness. Remembering Sono, I put my hand in my pocket and was reassured to feel the smooth outline of the jade seahorse. I've still got Sono's seahorse, I said, showing it to my father. Keep it carefully, he said. It may bring us luck. Are seahorses lucky? I asked. Who knows? But he gave it to you with love, and love is like a prayer. So keep it carefully. I didn't sleep much that night. I don't think anyone slept. No one spoke much either, except, of course, Mr. Muggeridge, who kept muttering something about cold beer and salami. I didn't feel so sick the next day. By 10 o'clock, I was quite hungry. But breakfast consisted of 2 biscuits, a piece of chocolate, and a little drinking water. It was another hot day, and we were soon very thirsty. But everyone agreed that we should ration ourselves strictly. 2 or 3 still felt ill, but the others, including Mr. Muggeridge, had recovered their appetites and normal spirits, and there was some discussion about the prospects of being picked up. Are there any distress rockets in the dinghy? Asked my father. If we see a ship or a plane, we can fire a rocket and hope to be spotted. Otherwise, there is not much chance of our being seen from a distance. A thorough search was made in the dinghy, but there were no rockets. Someone must have used them last Guy Fawkes Day, said Mr. Muggeridge. They don't celebrate Guy Fawkes Day in Holland, said my father. Guy Fawkes was an Englishman. Ah, said Mr. Muggeridge, not in the least put out. I have always said most great men are Englishmen. And what did this chap Guy Fawkes do? Tried to blow up the parliament, said my father. That afternoon we saw our first sharks. They were enormous creatures, and as they glided backward and forward under the boat, it seemed they might hit and capsize us. They went away for some time, but returned in the evening. At night, as I lay half asleep beside my father, I felt a few drops of water strike my face. At first, I thought it was the sea spray. But when the sprinkling continued, I realized it was raining lightly. Rain, I shouted, sitting up. It's raining. Everyone woke up and did his best to collect the water in mugs, hats, or other containers. Mr. Muggeridge lay back with his mouth open, drinking the rain as it fell. This is more like it, he said. You can have all the sun and sand in the world. Give me a rainy day in England. But by early morning, the clouds had passed, and the day turned out to be even hotter than the previous one. Soon we were all red and raw from the sunburn. By midday, even Mr. Muggeridge was silent. No one had the energy to talk. Then my father whispered, "Can you hear a plane, lad?" I listened carefully, and above the hiss of the waves, I heard what sounded like the distant drone of a plane. It must have been very far away because We could not see it. Perhaps it was flying into the sun, and the glare was too much for our sore eyes. Or perhaps we had just imagined the sound. Then the Dutchman who had lost his memory thought he saw land and kept pointing towards the horizon and saying, "That's Batavia. I told you we were close to shore. No one else saw anything." So my father and I were in the only ones imagining things. Said my father, "It only goes to show that a man can see what he wants to see, even if there is nothing to be seen." The sharks were still with us. Mr. Muggeridge began to resent. Mr. Muggeridge began to resent them, the sharks. He took off one of his shoes and hurled it at the nearest shark. But the big fish ignored the shoe and swam on after us. "Now, if your leg had been in that shoe, Mr. Muggeridge, the shark might have accepted it," observed my father. "Don't throw your shoes away," said the captain. "We might land on a deserted coastline and have to walk hundreds of miles." A light breeze sprang up that evening, and the dinghy moved more swiftly on the choppy water. "At last we are moving forward," said the captain. "In circles," said Mr. Muggeridge. But the breeze was refreshing. It cooled our burning limbs and helped us to get some sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up feeling very hungry. "Are you all right?" asked my father, who had been awake all the time. "Just hungry," I said. "And what would you like to eat?" he asked. "Oranges," I said. He laughed. "No oranges on board, but I kept a piece of my chocolate for you. And there's a little water if you're thirsty." I kept the chocolate in my mouth for a long time, trying to make it last. Then I sipped a little water. "Aren't you hungry?" I asked. "Ravenous. I could eat a whole turkey." When we get to Bombay or Madras or Colombo or wherever it is we get to, we'll go to the best restaurant in town and eat like shipwrecked sailors," I said. "Exactly," he said. "Do you think we'll ever get to land, Dad?" "I'm sure we will. You're not afraid, are you?" "No, not as long as you are with me," I said. Next morning, to everyone's delight, we saw seagulls. This was a sure sign of land, and that land couldn't be far away. But the dinghy could take days to drift a distance of 30 or 40 miles. The birds wheeled noisily above the dinghy. Their cries were the first familiar sound we heard for 3 days and 3 nights. And apart from the wind and the sea and our own weary voices, the sharks had disappeared. And that too was encouraging. They didn't like the oil slicks that were appearing in the water. But presently the gulls left us, and we feared we were drifting away from land. "Circles," repeated Mr. Muggeridge. "Circles. We had sufficient food and water for another week at sea. But no one even wanted to think about spending another week at sea. The sun was a ball of fire. Our water ration was insufficient to quench our thirst. By noon, we were without much hope or energy. My father had his pipe in his mouth. He didn't have any tobacco, but he liked holding the pipe between his teeth. He said it prevented his mouth from getting too dry. The sharks came back. Mr. Muggeridge removed his other shoe and threw it at them. "Nothing like a lovely wet English summer," he mumbled. I fell asleep in the well of the dinghy. My father's large handkerchief spread over my face. The yellow spots on the cloth seemed to grow into enormous revolving suns. When I woke up, I found a large shadow hanging over us. At first, I thought it was a cloud, but it was a shifting shadow. My father took the handkerchief from my face and said, "You can wake up now, lad. We'll be home very soon and dry." A fishing boat was beside us, and the shadow came from its wide, flapping sail. A number of bronzed, smiling, chattering fishermen, Burmese, as we discovered later, were gazing down at us from the deck of their boat. A few days later, my father and I were in Bombay. My father sold his rare stamps for over 1,000 rupees, and we were able to live in a comfortable hotel. Mr. Muggeridge was flown back to England. Later, we got a postcard from him saying the English rain was awful. "And what about us?" I asked. "Aren't we going back to England?" "Not yet," said my father. "You'll be going to a boarding school in Shimla until the war is over." "But why should I leave you?" I asked. "Because I've joined the RAF," he said. "RAF is the Royal Air Force. Don't worry, I'm being posted to Delhi. I'll be able to come up to see you sometimes." A week later, I was on a small train which went chugging up the steep mountain track to Shimla. Several Indian, Anglo-Indian, and English children tumbled around in the compartment. I felt quite out of place among them, as though I had grown out of their pranks. But I wasn't unhappy. I knew my father would be coming to see me soon. He had promised me some books, a pair of roller skates, and a cricket bat, just as soon as he got his first month's pay. Meanwhile, I had the jade seahorse which Sono had given me, and I have it with me today. That's the end of the story. That was interesting, very adventurous story by Ruskin Bond. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye bye.